Welcome to this explainer. You know that weird, heavy feeling of modern exhaustion? The one where you're just totally drained but haven't actually done much all day? Well, we all share it. And it's actually driven by a hidden biological trap right inside our own heads. Understanding this? It's a real game changer for how you approach your daily life. Be honest with yourself for a second. Have you ever found yourself just staring at your phone, zombie scrolling through endless content? Or maybe craving that very specific sugary junk food at 10 p.m. even when you're not hungry and don't even enjoy it anymore? Why do we keep doing this to ourselves?
Okay, let's dive into this. First off, we absolutely have to bust a massive myth. For years, everybody's been calling dopamine the pleasure chemical, right? Like it's just this magic joy juice splashing around in our heads. But it's not. Actually, scratch that. It's more like the motivation and craving chemical. It's the tiny messenger in your brain that creates the feeling of wanting something and then gives you the intense drive to actually go out and get it.
Which brings us to Section 1, meet the tiny messenger and the biological drive to survive.
You see, this brilliantly illustrates the core of our problem. This little messenger isn't the bad guy. Naturally, dopamine is there to reward us for survival behaviors, eating a good, nourishing meal, finishing a tough task to build shelter, or connecting with friends so we stay safe in a group. But today, well, we're dealing with a totally hacked system. Modern technology and highly processed foods have completely hijacked those natural survival rewards with effortless instant conveniences. And boom, that is exactly how the dopamine trap is built.
So how exactly does this biological snare snap shut on us? Let's get into Section 2, Anatomy of the Trap, and how the snare snaps shut.
It happens in 4 distinct, incredibly predictable stages: the spike, the crash, the craving, and finally, tolerance. Let's look closely at that very first step.
Step 1 is the spike. When you do something highly stimulating that requires absolutely zero effort, swiping through a feed of short, loud videos or tearing into a bag of sugary junk food, your brain releases a massive, totally unnatural burst of dopamine. It feels amazing in the moment.
Your brain's internal monologue reacts to that huge spike by basically screaming, "Wow, let's do that again." It literally thinks you've just hit the evolutionary survival jackpot because, well, it was so ridiculously easy to get so much reward.
But here is the age-old rule. What goes up must come down. Step 2 is the crash. This is the catch. This is exactly the moment where the trap snaps shut on you. To really understand this crash, you gotta understand a concept called homeostasis. Sounds fancy, but it's just your brain's natural desire to stay in a steady balance. Think of it kind of like an internal thermostat. When your dopamine spikes abnormally high from that effortless thrill, your brain actually panics a little bit. To protect itself from getting totally overwhelmed by all that stimulation, it violently slams on the brakes.
Now, what's really interesting here is the drop. To balance things out after a huge spike, the brain doesn't just return you to normal, it actually drops your dopamine levels below your normal everyday baseline. You go into a deficit. This below baseline drop is the exact reason why you suddenly feel bored, kinda sad, or completely restless the literal minute you put your phone down. Which leads us directly to Step 3, the craving. We call this the loop. Feeling a little down in that chemical deficit creates a very real, very urgent biological need in your brain to fix it. You just want to feel normal again. So, the crucial point is this: you aren't reaching for your phone a second time because you genuinely desire more content. You're unconsciously trying to medically cure that uncomfortable dopamine drop by using the exact same activity that caused it in the first place. It's wild, right? And if you repeat this loop day after day, week after week, you eventually reach Step 4, tolerance. You have officially hit the deep end. Your brain is simply exhausted by this daily roller coaster ride of spikes and crashes. Look at what an exhausted brain does to defend itself from you. It turns down its overall sensitivity and literally removes dopamine receptors. It's like wearing earplugs because the music is way too loud, and suddenly you can't hear normal conversations anymore. Because of this, reading a book, going for a quiet walk, or completing a chore, things that used to feel nice suddenly feel agonizingly dull. You now need incredibly high stimulation just to achieve a basic, normal feeling. At this point, you are officially trapped. The irony here is devastating, isn't it? You now need that cheap thrill just to survive the day and feel okay. But because your receptors are turned down, It brings you less and less actual joy every single time you do it.
I know, it sounds pretty bleak right now. But here is the amazing, empowering news. Section 3, How to Break Free and Rewiring Your Resilient Brain.
Because your brain is incredibly adaptable. Thanks to neuroplasticity, we can absolutely heal and reset this system. Let's move to our escape plan. It's a 3-step actionable toolkit: embracing the boredom, doing hard things, and taking a breather. Let's break these down. Strategy 1 is beautifully simple, but honestly really tough to do. Embrace the boredom. When you feel that sudden drop and the familiar itch to pick up your phone, just pause. Sit with that uncomfortable, bored feeling for just a few minutes. By simply refusing to feed the craving right then and there, your dopamine baseline will naturally restore itself. You just have to wait out the drop. Next, let's compare the biology of these two approaches. Cheap thrills require zero effort and give an instant spike, but result in an immediate painful crash. Hard things, on the other hand, like exercising, learning a difficult new skill, or even just organizing a messy room, well, they require upfront effort. They aren't instantly gratifying, but they provide a beautiful, slow, steady release of dopamine afterward.
And that brings us to strategy 2. Do hard things. This counterintuitive strategy builds a much healthier, longer-lasting reservoir of dopamine in your brain. It actually raises your overall baseline, making you feel genuinely accomplished and content for hours rather than just minutes.
Finally, strategy 3. Take a breather. Think of this as a mini dopamine detox. Dedicate just a few hours of your day where you completely step away from all screens and cheap thrills. This dedicated downtime works absolute wonders. It gives your brain's exhausted receptors the chance to heal, regenerate, and become sensitive enough to appreciate normal, everyday joys all over again.
I want to leave you with this really powerful thought. Understanding this cycle is your greatest superpower against it. Seriously, simply seeing the mechanics of this biological trap strips it of its power over you. Once you know it's just your brain desperately seeking balance, you can take the control back from your devices.
Which leaves us with one final, very important question. Now that you see the trap clearly, what are you going to do with your next hour? Will you feed the spike, or will you do something hard? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.